Welcome, everyone. This is Pilot Needles, and you're listening to LOTRO Players News, where we take a look at the latest news in LOTRO and hear LOTRO players. And this week we have with us Krister.
Hello.
And a guest flying in from Ravenloft, Draculita.
I'm here, sort of.
Sort of.
I'm just in the shadows. Pay no
He's in
attention
the-
to the man behind the curtain, or coffin, as it were.
Behind the cough and all that stuff. Yeah. Just Strahd having a little bit of time, right?
Exactly.
All right. Well, we have some news this week because we have some developers' diaries that were published this week. One for the captain and one for the warden. And I hope that Krister is prepared to talk about the captain a little bit.
Uh-oh. Well, I'm always prepared to talk.
The dev diaries, well, the first page of them was posted by Cordovan, but the words were written by Anmak Mahal. And there's been quite a lot of discussion in the forums about this, so I'm going to stick to what's in the original two posts on this. And if you want to bring up something that's from the further discussion down there, or we could do that, but we're going to just start out at this. And in here it says, "Hello everyone, I am on Mike Mahal, and I'm here to start talking about the upcoming captain class changes." Are you scared yet?
I live in a perpetual state of fear.
Okay. The captain is a unique class. Captains are flexible melee warriors and healers focused on supporting allies rather than maximizing personal output. I guess that's true?
That's a factual statement.
That's a factual statement. You're making everybody better. Yes. Captains are team players through and through. Yes. So he first talks about the current state of the captain. Talking about what the various lines do, what the current state of each of the three lines. And they're saying, yes, captains specializing in healing the hands make a great raid group support healers, providing lots of passives AoE healings, but fail to keep up with the other main healers when it comes to single target healing and responding to large damage spikes. Which is why they make better at the raid level, since their augments are more powerful then.
Well, that's exactly why captains really can't hesitate to use their big skills either while they're healing, because that's the whole thing. Is they're absolutely right. You're not going to be good at the reacting to a damage spike, but what you do is you're just setting up a gigantic river of health, and you just keep pumping your buffs into that river and hoping that nobody dies at that point.
Yes. Captain specializing in lead the charge, Red makes fantastic raid group DPS supporters, provided your primary DPS players are physical damage dealers. Red Line Captain support unfortunately doesn't extend as well to tactical damage classes. So they help the melee ones more than they help the tactical people then.
They do, yep.
All right. A solo captain, even fully equipped in offensive gear, who is questing, delving, or fighting monster players on their own, will struggle to produce meaningful damage, even when compared to non-DPS specialization of some other classes.
Right. So now you got to think about that too, Pine Link. That's why we laugh in the fear of getting return damage, having a reflect, because we're not doing any damage in the first place. So.
Captains specializing in leader of men, Yellow, make wonderful tanks for multiple group sizes. This specialization is by far the most broadly useful of all current captain specializations, without regard to content type or group size. However, that word "however" always shakes you in fear, I think. Gameplay for the Yellow Line captain still suffers from a lack of second skill to open up the battle-readied state, as well as a relative dearth of defensive mechanisms compared to other tank specializations. Much of the value of a yellow captain brings to the group comes from Motivate, a passive buff that's not an interactive combat mechanic, and their in-combat res, which can act as a full reset for three-person groups, and the benefits from always-on skills with effects like On Guard, Inspire, Revealing Mark, and Battle Hardened damage reduction. And I know last night we had a captain in our group, and I think the most important skill that was up was the Revealing Mark.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the current state. So any strong disagreements with any of those?
No, not at all. I think it's. I feel. I've always been kind of a tanky captain, so
Right.
it's always been yellow, red, blue. But blue has always been. That's what I'm kind of curious about what they're going to change, because blue has always been the most difficult one. I'd say that's the one that we do the least. So it'd be interesting to see if they're going to change things to make that more viable.
All right. Now, the first note that he puts up is about the brother skills. Shield Brother and Song Brother have switched places, and some ex-brother effects are being shuffled around. It's always been a little awkward that Song Brother skills increase the allies' healing output, and Shield Brother skills increases the allies' defensive potential. Unless you're explicitly in a fellowship within a raid with an ally of the same role, skills don't particularly help your ally. A captain filling in the role of main healer won't often have another main healer in the group, and likewise, a main tank captain won't often have another tank in the group. Obviously, some raids might require multiple players of a role of that type, but I would argue that that's an outlier relative to most gameplay situations. However, a main tank captain will almost always have a healer ally in the fellowship, and a main healer captain will almost always have a tank ally in the fellowship. So it seems natural that blue line captains should have a shield brother, while yellow line captains should have a song brother. This doesn't mean that you'll lose the to arms effects you love, however. Ex-brother effects will now be different from the personal effects you receive when using skills like to arms and inspire. What do you think about that?
Well, I guess I'll have to see how that plays out. I don't have any particular strong feelings about that either way. But yeah, I'd have to say in the scenarios where I am, it's been. I mean, blue line's just. It's almost irrelevant to talk about it because it's just been so long since I've used it. But coming in as a tank, oftentimes my shield brother will be the healer. But it's not like it was awful to make the healer a little bit more defensive.
Keep them alive.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It was the whole point was you give them a bit more survivability. But so that's why I don't think that change feels neither here nor there right now. I guess that would have to be something I play, and I have a feeling that it won't be something that's
right,
even noticeable, frankly. So
okay, battle state changes. Battle Readied will now increase your threat multiplier for captains specializing in Yellow Line. The existing Battle Ready damage increase will improve the healing potency of all your Valor heals, see Valor below, and taken together with existing traits and traceries, captains in every specialization should have some incentive to maintain both battled states as much as possible.
cool. That sounds cool.
All right. Valiant Strike and Shadow's Lament. These skills will no longer put you into a battle-ready state. Since these skills benefit from being used while both battle-readied and battle-hardened are active, it's awkward for them to give you battle-readied. You're forced to either use them non-optimally as finishing skills or maximize their output and sacrifice the battle-readied application. So you're saying, well, go. What's going to do it then? And Defensive Strike. Defensive Strike is making a return to provide all captains with a second baseline skill that grants them a battle-ready state. You'll acquire Defensive Strike before level 50, and it has a cooldown of 15 seconds. Nothing too fancy here, but a reliable skill to keep your skill sequences moving, even if you happen to be a tank.
I like that. I actually like that. That's yeah, because that should be the whole point. Is you're trying to get battle ready up and then leave battle ready up as long as you possibly can to benefit from it.
All right. Now, here we are for Yellow Line. The changes that they're having for Yellow Line. So this is where you start to tremble.
Perhaps.
Yes.
It depends here.
Okay. Shield Brothers Call. This skill will be transformed into one which requires you target an ally. That ally would gain minus 30% incoming damage for 5 seconds. When 5 seconds expires, some of that player's threat will be transferred to you.
Cool. Okay.
Shield of the Dunedain.
Oh, here we go.
I'm just
going to say beforehand, finally. This is the one. You're just plucking on my strings right now. I'm just warning you.
This is your favorite thing?
Say. No. They made a change that really frustrated me with this one, so I want to hear what they're doing now.
This is a new skill that will take the place of Shield of the Dunedain. Oh, the Shield of the Dunedain is becoming a skill called At the Fore. Yes. This skill will negate 50% of your incoming damage for 10 seconds. And each hit taken will give you a stack battle endurance. After the initial damage reduction expires, you'll gain plus 100% melee damage, and each melee attack you make will restore 5% of your morale. This skill will have a 4-minute cooldown.
Does it say anything about, is that a skill you can apply to yourself?
This is...
So the big change that they made, and I'm sure
this sounds like it's a skill that only applies to yourself.
Okay, because I know that, because I certainly was frustrated too, but it was when they made Shield of the Dunedain not self-castable. So when they changed that took another kind of a big piece of the tanking, or at least my tanking strategy with the Yellow Captain. And because the Shield of the Dunedain was another point of survival for you. It was another, I can give my healers 10 more seconds to save me, with that skill. And so when we couldn't cast it on ourselves anymore, that was a loss. However, in my mind, I chalked it up to the tanks the captains had become far better tanks and far more preferable tanks to the actual tanks at that point. So I could, to mitigate the captain's effect to make Guardians more relevant again, I was kind of thinking that might have been the direction that they were going with it. Because I feel bad for Guardians. I feel like they've always gotten kind of the raw end of it. But okay, that's cool. That's cool. I have a feeling a lot of captains had similar frustrations if they're tanks. So this must be the response to it, is they're actually dividing it into two different skills. One is, okay, that's cool. One is self-applicable, and that sounds awesome. Okay, so now I'm curious to hear what the other skill is now.
All right. Strength in numbers. While the effect of the skill isn't going to change, many of you have called out the fact that it needs to be tuned upwards. Expect to see strength in numbers healing values go up, especially when it hits the maximum number of allies.
Cool. That's cool.
Fighting with Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry about that part. Do they mention anything about it being fellowship or raid wide in that effect?
They did not say whether it's fellowship wide or raid wide.
Okay.
Fighting withdrawal. Fighting withdrawal would lose its parry buff. The parry buff has a huge impact on your damage mitigation, but tying it to your CC breakout skill makes it feel bad to just use it for parry or just for CC removal. For captain specializations in yellow, this parry buff will be shifted into hammer stroke. And Hammer Stroke, this will be a melee skill that deals significant damage and gives you a 30% parry chance buff for 10 seconds with a 45-second cooldown.
Interesting. Okay, I can see their justification for that. So okay.
Right. And let's see. Also, a note about Gallant Display. Gallant Display will become a baseline captain skill, dealing frontal AoE damage in 2 hits. The increased potency and cost from tiering up of Gallant effect will be increased. This means that tiering up the Gallant buff will make all variants of the skill much more effective and much more power hungry. Additional effects will depend on your specialization. So for Yellow Line, that means AoE damage and minor self-healing. Subsequent uses increase power cost, damage, and healing. And let's see.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting because we know that they're talking about, the fact that power isn't a factor for us right now. That everything is going to cost more power, it feels like.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. Now, in Red Line, it will be greatly increasing damage. It'll be increasing damage more on that one. In Blue Line, of course, it'll be increasing your healing. So, and it looks like in Yellow Line, it's a little bit more on the balanced side between those two. Now, here's for Red Line. Master of War. When you land a critical hit with Inspire, not Shadow's Lament, you and your Blade Brother will both receive a 50% critical chance for 5 seconds. And Critical Magnitude. Captain Critical Magnitude bonus were a little out of hand. Most of these bonuses will see their magnitudes reduced, but base damage will be increased so much that your overall damage output will still be much higher and less reliant on good crit range to boot. All right. And concerning standing alone, standalone Inspire becomes Self-Determination. Self-Determination will be a melee attack that will give you increased damage and slightly reduced incoming damage for 18 seconds. By using the skill more or less off cooldown, you can maintain this buff for 100% of the time you're in combat while standing alone. Now, what is standing alone?
I'm not sure. Maybe I haven't been using that skill at all. Standing alone. It's not ringing a bell. Maybe I need to hear that. Stand alone. Okay.
Yeah, that's the.
I'm trying to think about what that. I feel like it's called something else. Oh my god! Yeah, I'm drawing a total blank on that one.
All right. And standalone to arms becomes Masterful Strike. This will be a strong melee attack, which also gives you a strong damage buff. And standalone Words of Courage becomes Courageous Heart. This skill will give you 20% mitigations for 10 seconds and will have a 50-second cooldown. Toggling standalone off to return this skill back to the Words of Courage and not reduce its active cooldown. Yeah.
Okay, so that's right. That sounds like an entirely new mechanism right there.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Standalone sounds like it's a stance. Then.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's why it was a bit confusing. That's something it sounds like we don't have yet. So.
Okay. So I suspect that standalone is going to be a solo stance.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like, which is cool.
So, so that means some of your captain buffing skills are going to be turning into things to help you when you're by yourself.
Yeah, so it's like increasing DPS and that's awesome for because a red cappy is the most common solo cappy, so to do actual damage with the captain, it's been a dream.
Anyway, there are also some Blue Line things, but since you don't know as much about the Blue Line, I was wondering, should we bother discussing them?
Well, we could. I mean, Blue Line is I think it's just the one that captains play the least. You know, it's
All right.
we either wanted for our damage increase for everybody else or as a tank. So
Right. All right.
I'd like to see if the cool thing was there was a point where we were me and the another captain and our kid were doing main raid healing, and we like doing that too because it was not typical for a captain to be able or to think about a captain doing that. So it'd be cool to see if they are changing blue line to such a degree that it might be relevant again.
For example, specialization proc heal. The 10% chance proc heal from specialization enhance a healing has been removed. This heal is inconsequentially small and added an unnecessary RNG element to core healing output. So I guess they're buffing healing overall instead of having this 10% proc thing in there. Inspiring Presence. The current effect from this trait would be replaced with the new effect. Critical hits with melee skills will give you 1 stack of Inspiring. Each stack will give you a 2% outgoing healing, up to 5 stacks. At 5 stacks, you'll gain Gift of the Spirit, a skill which consumes all stacks to significantly heal a targeted ally.
That's really cool.
Gallant Display. When traded blue, Gallant Display won't change much. It would have a moderate fellowship-wide heal, and both its potency and power cost would increase if used again within a short window. The bonus will no longer be consumed by Inspire. You use Inspire so frequently that it's practically impossible to tier up Gallant Buff or Gallant Display itself. Right? Reform the lines. This trait will be moving over into specialization column, so it's still blue exclusive, while its position within the tree will be replaced with Shield of the Dunedain trait, granting you the eponymous skill. Okay, let's go. Okay. And Valor. This trait's effect has been removed. It's fairly weak and unreliable heal. It has been replaced by an effect which adds a bonus heal to most of your melee skills. These heals will scale along with the damage of the relevant skills and will only be applied to your shield brother.
Oh, that's actually kind of cool too. That's interesting.
All right. So that's the list of updates relating to the captain. Now, I'm sure they'll be tweaking that based on the comments that were given here, and we'll have to see what's really there when the changes hit Bulwer in probably a couple of weeks. So overall, what do you think about them?
Overall it sounds interesting. Yeah, I think I'm really kind of curious about if these changes, because it's interesting the changes with the blue line. I want to understand if that's putting captains in a position where they could be primary healers again. Because but I'm thinking not, just because the way that those healing skills that you just outlined would work would be for their shield brother,
right?
Which is still great. I mean, just as a supplemental healer, because I think that's what they're thinking of it, is that captains won't be the main healer, but they'll be the off healer or the off tank, and fulfill that role quite well. So maybe that's what they're probably trying to enhance.
Yeah. But the difficult thing is, though, if they're off healers, then they're not going to be used much for healing in small fellowships then.
Well, I think that ultimately depends, because if you have a really good tank, then the idea is that they're aggro. In that small group, the aggro is always going to be on the tank. And then, so if the off healer captain is just healing the tank, and all of their shield brothers skills are applying healing bonuses to the tank, I'm curious to see what that would be, because it sounds like
okay,
as long as you're alive, you're going to be keeping whatever your tank is, whoever you're focused on alive as well. And that might work really well in a small group.
All right. So that's what they have planned for the captain. Now, on top of that, they're also making changes for the warden. And
I rely on your wardenese. So, well, how are you feeling about the warden changes?
so far, so good based on what I look at it. One of the changes that they're making is to resolve an annoyance that has been driving me batty for, I think, the last 4 years, I think it is. Because at some point, they had shuffled around the skills so that you sometimes get five builder gambits before some 4 builder gambits, and I'm always losing track of what order you'll be getting in, and some of those gambits I really need come very, very late. Because there was one gambit, for example, one of the healing gambits in there where it would come way, way late. It's always later than I think it would be. But even though there's a 5 builder gambit in the same line that comes 20 levels before it, I think. So it was. I was always getting confused with them. So now they're saying first, then the gambit change is that the 2s were always going to be learned before the 3s, always learned before the 4s, and then the 5s, so that they will be in order like that in when you get them. So the gaining of them is going to be reasonable, and the gaining of them is going to be shift around a little bit. The later ones are going to be earlier than they used to be. Some of the earlier ones are going to be pushed back. So they're reducing the number that you start out with, but you'll have them all earlier than you would have in the past.
Cool. Okay.
So I have a feeling it's going to be a more logical order, which we'll be getting them. We'll have to see on that. And the other thing is that when they're talking about gambit chains, they're not going to be as reliant on doing an exactly the same type in order. Because right now, what happens is, let's say you wanted to get a little bit of a bonus on there. You could start out with doing a 2-length gambit, and let's say the boot, for example, then a 3-length gambit, and then doing either a 4 or 5. And what happens if you do the 2, then the 3, and then the 4, all in the same line? Then that would give you a little bonus that you're building up in what you're doing. So if you're doing the damage type ones, then you'd be doing extra damage and the like. So they're changing this so that when you do a 2, it allows you then to, is that whenever you do a 3, not necessarily in the same line, but any 3, that 3 then will get a bonus, and then the next 4 or 5 after that will get a bonus. So therefore, it doesn't matter whether or not they're in the same line. So you can do combinations more freely than you're able to do in the current system.
That actually sounds like a really good change for the warden right there. So
that's what's on. Now, of course, the tricky thing is getting used to that, but that's an entirely different matter. But that's always been the thing with the wardens. And the other thing that they're doing is with the javelin skills, when you're in the javelin line, the yellow line, first of all, yellow line is no longer going to be a specialization as it currently is. So this is, I guess, the 3rd class that's going to have a yellow line that's not a specialization, because we had the brawlers who started out that way, and then someone recently changed that way. I forgot who the.
Well, you're right, and that's kind of curious too. I wonder if that's eventually something they're considering for every single.
I don't think it's
class.
being considered for every class. I don't think it's being considered for the captain, for example, because if they're planning on doing that for the captain, they'd be doing it in this update.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah. And you'd think, I would think off the top of my head, if they were going to do for the captain, it would have been in the blue line, anyways. That would have been the non-specialized one, just because that's the least frequently utilized.
It's not necessarily the least frequently utilized. It's the one that doesn't seem to make too much sense as a specialization, is more what they're saying, because if it tends to support both the other sets and there's very little reason to specialize explicitly in that, I think it's usually the ones they consider for that. And in this case, they're thinking, well, you might be wanting to use javelins regardless of which of the two lines you're in and do some range stuff. So I think that's probably part of the reason why they're thinking of switching it over like that. And with the way I play, yellow line is usually the one I leave out, despite the fact that there are some yellow line skills that I really, really love, but I really can't justify having yellow line as my main one because I don't feel like that I could just, because whenever I throw javelins and start doing on that, I've got all these horde of people coming after me, and now I'm going to have to switch out of the javelin stance, and now I'm out of the javelin stance, so I'm not getting the most out of what I'm doing. So I've never done well. Some people are saying that I'm just not playing it right, but, well, they're changing it anyway, so I'm not going to learn what they mean by right.
Yeah, but if you think about it, like when I think about the javelin skill at the Warden, I always contribute to that to like a Roman legionnaire, where the whole point of the javelins was you just hurled the javelins while they're incoming, and then you're engaging in hand to hand at that point,
Well, yes, that tends to be the way in which the Romans did fight, and that's right. Yeah, because the javelin is more like as they're approaching, sort of a pulling mechanism more than anything else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I can see why that would be the best one to think about, not being specialized. So
yeah, and also they're talking about also concerning javelins in here. They're saying that the lasting mark, this trait has been split into two traits: marked targets and diminishing targets. The first rank is giving you the corresponding effect of certain gambits. Marked targets will be applied by any skill in the boot cauterizing steel gambit sequence, and diminishing target will be applied to any skills in the precise blow spear of fate gambit sequence. Subsequent ranks of both traits increase the duration of their corresponding debuffs. I'm not exactly sure what it means there, but I guess I'll be testing that out. Yeah. But one there is ambush. Ambush no longer requires you to be in combat to use. Actually, I think they must be out of combat to use, must be what they meant there. Because
I was going to say, wait
currently,
a sec.
it doesn't allow you to be in combat to use it currently. So I presume that they meant no longer requires you to be out of combat to use, which if that's the case, that would be wonderful, because one of the biggest annoyances I have as a warden is to spend 4 seconds prepping a javelin, and just before I toss it out, someone goes and starts combat.
Some
somehow
dumb captain
I
runs
get
in.
into combat and it gets thrown.
Yeah, that would be irritating as well,
so, Right, so that tends to get irritating, and also can be a pain if my soldier, for example, if someone approaches me, just so when I'm trying to take care of a mob that's slowly walking towards me, and I'm trying to time the exact time which to start throwing my javelin, because it has to be so that they're coming in range, but I have to throw it before they see me and actually throwing combat, and that's always been a real tough pain to do in ambush. So I would love to be able to have that go. Now, I presume that if I start too late and I am spending 5 seconds standing there holding a javelin and they're pounding me in the face, well, that may interrupt me or something, but that's an entirely different matter. But that a stealthy goblin that I can't see anywhere has decided that I'm in combat with them and I can't do anything about it. That's always been an annoyance of mine.
Well, we've been in raids where you have those ice. It's like those ice elementals where you start taking damage. Yeah, you start taking damage right when you enter. So you're in combat right away, and you're in combat the entire time. So I like that. I like that change. I think that makes sense.
All right, so we'll see how that works. And now another thing they're doing is concerning assailment stance is that if you are in assailment stance, when you're in assailment stance, currently what happens is they change the gambit to a different version of the gambit. And what happens is that there are two different versions of Gambit, and I could never remember exactly what the assailment version of the Gambit did, because I'm always remembering what the regular version of it doing, but because they're different in there, I'm not quite sure what's going on there. So they decided, all right, both will do the exact same thing, that the only difference between the two, they actually have one Gambit, and it's just that in one case you happen to be throwing javelins, and the other one you happen to be poking them with a stick. So I think that'd be a lot easier to remember, because
which technically is kind of the same thing.
Yes.
It's just when you're poking with the stick, you're throwing the javelin, but you're not letting go of it. Really, you know what I mean.
Right. So yes, that's what we have in there. So we'll see how that works out, and I expect there to be a Bulwer build in a couple of weeks, and so I'll be able to test it out there and see how I feel about it.
Yeah, and I overall I'm feeling positive about the captain changes. I was hoping I'm very happy to hear the Shield of the Dunedain kind of modification of thought there. It would have been really nice. Just my little pet peeve was when they made it so I had to stand still to do my in combat res. I was hoping that they might free us once more, so because captains run around all the time, So.
Oh well.
I know it's a minor thing. It's just a pet peeve. So
you just have to hope that it's because they did say that not everything made it into the dev diary, and that there are other changes that we will see when we see the full release notes.
It's going to be something horrible too. Like we decided the captains have too much morale. 70% reduction in morale.
Well, I'm not too sure they would do that if you are in the tanking line, but it might do that in
that
red
would
line.
be horrible. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's what's nice is right now captains get a pretty impressive morale boost for being in yellow line. Yeah. So.
Okay. Yes, I've been hearing some people talking about things like 2 million morale or something like that.
Yeah, I just achieved that myself, and I'm a late bloomer with that. So yeah, I'm fully buffed. I'm just a shade over 2 million now.
Yes, see, I'm lucky to get up to 1 million.
Well, if you're 1 million and properly mitigated, then that's good. So
I'm a warden. What's properly mitigated mean?
So what what a captain thinks about a warden is cannon fodder. We send you guys in first.
Anyway, that's what we've got coming up there, but I'm sure there'll be all sorts of changes in what's being done, and we'll see Bulwer, and perhaps in response to what's on Bulwer, there will be changes before it goes live, and after it goes live, well, we'll see how many complaints there are before we see how long it takes to settle down. So that's it for the game news in there. So let's head into the store sales. Drac, are you up right now?
I am.
You think
because I figured you were going to call on me for this. So I came back out of the coffin just to be ready for this. You moved
from behind the coffin.
I did. Because I'm like, I know Pine Leaf's going to call on me because I used to do this back in the day. So we have stand out from the crowd. It's 20% off. Select shared wardrobe space. Select cosmetic outfit slots. Mounted combat trait spec and cosmetic slots as well. Select cosmetics as well. All that is through February 2nd. Your weekly coupon code this week is a free dye. It is the white color. Coupon code is white dye X1. So WHITEDYEX1. That is also conveniently through February 2nd.
All right. And also, speaking of February 2nd, that is when they are currently scheduling to have the start of the Ill Omen Skirmish event. We'll see what happens there. And that probably means that we will have a small update next week, because I don't see them already having the Ill Omen stuff already in the game, which means if they do, fine. They won't need an update then. But my guessing is that there's going to be a small update next week, probably on Wednesday, in order to add all the ill omen stuff. We'll see how right or wrong I am on that when we get to next week's show. And that's it for our store sales and our news. So let's head into our week in gaming. And Krister, what were you up to?
Well, for the last few weeks, we definitely, I'm sure you've experienced this as well in the game where sometimes your kin's very active and sometimes your kin's really quiet. Sometimes there's just what's just incredible is just to think how many years we've been playing this game now. And so we've been into quiet time, but now it's just gotten too quiet. So I'm trying to think about what to do because we're definitely not getting the numbers together to raid anymore. And we definitely want to raid. So I'm pondering that. So this Friday, unfortunately, we just had 2 people show up. So we weren't going to do any raiding last night. So. I definitely will. I definitely keep the fires burning because I know that people will come back and people have come back, but it's just been very, very quiet on the LOTRO front lately. So, but on the ESL front, I've built the perfect Deathhead warrior. He is amazing, and so I got the Minotaur cosmetics. And I have owned that Minotaur head. I've had other people with that same helmet run up to me, look at me, and then log off. And I know they're just logging off because they're embarrassed that they don't look like I do. So I've been having a lot of fun with that. And then it's so funny since we did that Civ 6 game. I've been playing Civ 6 like a maniac. And the one thing I finally did, which I'm very happy about, is I found a mod in the workshop that disables the giant death robot because I hate it. I hate it when the giant death robot comes out into play.
Giant death robot?
Yeah, it's the future tech late game unit that just is absolutely devastating. And so it's such a game changer that it makes the game kind of boring because it's all about building those then. So disabling that makes it a lot funner, a lot more fun. And I've been having a lot of fun playing that. So, and Pineleaf, what have you been up to?
Oh, well, in Landreval, my lore master there completed the quest for the Black Grave finally. I had been doing various quests. That's right. I had decided that I was going to do that quest line on my lore master because the first character that I'd ran the Black Raven in a group on was my lore master. So I figured, well, I'll be doing this a couple more times. So I went and picked up the quest, did the quest line and all that stuff. Finally got to the point, and I think it's been 2 months since I've played that character with the group and being able to do that particular quest line. So last night I finally was on my lore master for Friday Night Fight, and we had just the right number to do the Black Grave. So we went and ran it and finally finished that quest. And now, of course, that means a lot of people were staying around as I was talking to various people inside the instance. But I was able to finish it, and so now I've seen the end of that particular storyline over in Cardolan. And then for my low-level lore master, I completed the quest inside Herna, and then I've headed over into Sarn Ford, and I'm finishing up on the quest over there. And on my mid-level warden, I was running some missions. And that was my week in LOTRO. Drac, you have anything to mention concerning your week in gaming?
I still don't have a skeleton steed. How many years are we going on in this red painted skeleton steed now? Yeah.
Oh, well.
There's my contribution to the show. You are welcome.
We currently have 13 supporters on Patreon. If you'd like to join this illustrious raid of players and help support LOTRO players, you can go to the donations page. You can support the players allowed on Patreon. your money we use for our podcast hosting, website hosting, and to pay for our live shows. And we have no emails this week. But if you'd like to send one, you can send it to podcast@LotraPlayers.com. You can also follow us at Twitter at the Players Alliance. Yeah. Okay, that was moved. Oh, great. Yes. Yeah. Players Alliance has 2 shows. On Wednesdays at 7 p.m. US Eastern Time, we have DDO Players News. On Saturdays at 8:30 p.m. US Eastern Time, we have LOTRO Players News. You can join us for our shows at LOTROPlayers.com/live. And that's all for tonight. And this is Pilot Needles reminding you to skirmish responsibly.